It's Sunday evening. The living room is glowing blue from the TV. Someone just missed a penalty shot, and three grown adults are on their feet, hands on their heads, yelling at a screen like the players can hear them. Your friend is pacing. Your uncle is muttering about defense strategy. Someone actually looks a little heartbroken.
And you? You're on the couch, quietly scrolling your phone, wondering how a group of millionaires kicking a ball around has just emotionally hijacked the entire room. You try to care, you really do, but you don't feel that surge. You don't feel the rush, the tribal fire, the adrenaline spike. Mostly you feel neutral, maybe mildly curious, maybe slightly amused. And if you've ever sat in that moment thinking, is something wrong with me? This video is for you. Because today we're talking about the psychology of people who don't obsess over sports. And contrary to popular belief, it's not about being boring, antisocial, or not competitive. It's about how your brain bonds, how you experience identity, and where you choose to place your emotional energy. Most people assume sports obsession is just about liking games, but psychologically, it's rarely about the game. It's about belonging. It's about identity. It's about a very ancient part of your brain that loves tribes. Have you ever noticed how sports fans say "we" when talking about their team? We won. We got destroyed. As if they were personally on the field. That's not delusion. That's something called social identity theory. Psychologists found that we naturally defend ourselves by the groups we belong to: family, nationality, religion, and yes, sports teams. When the group wins, your brain gives you a little hit of shared glory. When it loses, you feel it personally. Now, imagine you're someone who doesn't feel that pull. It's not that you can't belong, it's that your brain might not anchor identity through large symbolic groups as strongly as others do. Picture another scene. You're at work on Monday morning. Everyone's rehashing last night's game. Someone's replaying a goal on their phone. There's laughter, inside jokes, heated debates. You're standing there with your coffee, smiling politely. You feel like you walked into a conversation already in progress. You could fake enthusiasm, you could Google the score, but it feels performative. This often connects to something called self-concept clarity. Some people have a very internally anchored identity. They know who they are independent of group affiliations. Others feel more defined through collective belonging. Neither is better, they're just different wiring. People who don't obsess over sports often derive identity from personal projects, ideas, relationships, creativity, or one-on-one connections rather than large-scale group symbols. They bond through conversation, not jerseys. And here's something fascinating. Sports fandom heavily activates what psychologists call BIRGing, basking in reflected glory. After a team wins, fans are more likely to wear team merchandise, post about the victory, even stand a little taller. It's a socially acceptable way to borrow achievement. If you don't feel that pull, it might be because your brain doesn't crave reflected glory as much as intrinsic meaning. You don't get a dopamine spike from someone else's victory. You'd rather build something yourself. Think about the friend who spends Sunday building a small business website, learning guitar, or reorganizing their apartment while the championship game is on. To some, that looks antisocial. To others, it's simply a different source of stimulation. There's also the question of emotional investment. Sports are structured uncertainty. There's a clock, a score, clear rules, a winner, a loser. For many brains, that's addictive. It creates predictable adrenaline cycles. It's like a safe roller coaster. But if you're someone who already feels overstimulated by life, by work stress, family drama, global news, your nervous system might not want another emotional spike. You might unconsciously avoid high arousal environments. Instead of yelling at a screen, you'd rather watch a documentary, read a book, or have a deep conversation about something abstract. Let me paint another micro scene. You're at a stadium for the first time. The crowd roars, the ground vibrates. People are chanting in sync. It's electric. For some, it's euphoric. For others, it's overwhelming. You feel small, maybe slightly detached, maybe even bored once the novelty wears off. This isn't about intelligence or depth. It's about sensory and emotional thresholds. Some people are high sensation seekers.
Others prefer lower stimulation but deeper processing. You might not want the roller coaster. You want the quiet cafe. There's also something else happening: narrative preference. Sports are a very specific kind of story: hero versus rival, comeback arc, underdog triumph, dynasty collapse. If you don't obsess over sports, it's not that you don't love stories. You might just prefer different narratives: psychological dramas, human behavior, business battles, philosophical questions. You don't crave the scoreboard, you crave insight. And here's where it gets relationally interesting. Imagine you're dating someone who lives and breathes sports. Game nights are sacred. Their mood shifts with outcomes. You watch them slump after a loss like they personally failed. You try to empathize, but part of you is confused. It's just a game, you think.
From their perspective, your neutrality might feel cold. From your perspective, their intensity might feel irrational. This creates a subtle loop. They double down on enthusiasm with fellow fans. You withdraw further, not because you don't care about them, but because you don't speak that emotional language. Psychologists call this mismatched emotional scripts. We all have templates for what's worth celebrating, mourning, or investing in. When those templates don't overlap, it can feel like disconnection. But here's the hidden strength.
People who don't obsess over sports often have more flexible identity boundaries. Because you're not tying self-worth to a team's win-loss record, your mood might be more internally regulated. You don't ride the same emotional roller coaster. That can mean more stability. There's research suggesting that while sports can create powerful community bonds, it can also intensify in-group, out-group thinking. Rivalries can become hostility. Us versus them becomes literal. If you're someone who doesn't get swept up in that, you might naturally resist tribal polarization in other areas too. Remember that Sunday living room scene? The shouting, the pacing, the heartbreak? Now imagine the game ends. The team loses. The room deflates. Someone storms out. Someone else blames the referee. You're still on the couch, steady. Not because you're superior, not because you're detached from life, but because your emotional investments are elsewhere. Maybe later that night, you stay up talking to a friend about their career doubts, or you journal about an idea that's been bothering you, or you watch a long interview dissecting human behavior. Your intensity just points in a different direction. And here's something people rarely admit. Obsessing over sports is socially rewarded, especially in certain cultures. It signals loyalty, passion, shared culture. Not caring can sometimes be misread as aloofness. So you might have learned to downplay your indifference. You nod along, you memorize a few team names, you fake outrage over a referee call. But inside, you're thinking about something completely different. Have you ever noticed that feeling? The sense of being physically present but mentally elsewhere during a game discussion? That's not disengagement from people. It's misalignment with the stimulus. And let's zoom out even further. Human beings evolved in tribes where group coordination meant survival. Rituals, chants, shared victories, they strengthened cohesion. Modern sports are like a sanitized echo of that ancient wiring. Stadiums are our modern coliseums. If you don't feel electrified by that, it doesn't mean you lack tribal instinct. It might mean you fulfill it differently. Maybe through close friendships, maybe through creative communities, maybe through intellectual circles, maybe through family. Your tribe might be smaller, quieter, less televised. And there's a philosophical layer here too. When you don't obsess over sports, you might have an unconscious filter about where you invest meaning. You might ask, even if you don't articulate it, does this align with my personal growth? Does this deepen my understanding of life? If the answer is no, your brain simply doesn't attach. That can look like apathy from the outside, but from the inside, it's selectivity. Of course, none of this means sports are shallow. For many, they are connection, nostalgia, father-son bonding, shared history. A team can hold decades of memory. The jersey isn't just fabric, it's childhood. But if that doesn't resonate with you, that's not a defect in your emotional circuitry. It just means your scoreboard is different. Maybe your wins are finishing a book that changed how you think, having a conversation that shifts someone's perspective, hitting a personal milestone no one else sees. Let's come back to that opening scene one more time. The missed penalty shot, the collective gasp, the hands on heads. Instead of asking, why don't I care? Maybe the better question is, what do I care about this intensely? Where does your voice get louder? Where does your heart race? Where do you lose track of time? That's your arena. The core psychological pattern here is simple but powerful. You don't lack passion. You allocate it differently. And maybe, instead of forcing yourself to chant in a stadium that doesn't move you, you can gently explore the spaces that do. What communities feel natural? What conversations light you up? What topics make you forget to check the clock? Because not obsessing over sports isn't about being detached from life. It might mean you're just choosing a different game. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the odd one out in a room full of screaming fans, I'd love to hear your experience. What do you invest your emotional energy in instead? And if you're curious about the hidden psychology behind other everyday behaviors, stick around. There's a lot more beneath the surface than we're usually told. Maybe next Sunday, when the room erupts over a missed shot, you'll smile, not because you suddenly care about the score, but because you understand your own wiring a little better.